On today's show, the Cleveland Cavaliers have been fined for sitting a player yet again by the NBA. Last time I said it was the cost of doing business. This time, I think the team has a gripe with the league. We'll talk about that, plus why the Cavs' offensive shot diet needs to change in order for them to get to where they want to be, and go over who's going to miss tonight's game against San Antonio. We'll do that all on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, everybody. My name is Danny Cunningham, and I cover the Cleveland Cavaliers over my Substack, The Inside Shot, and you're listening to another edition of Locked On Cavs, which, of course, is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in all of America. You can find this show and any other Locked On podcast anywhere you get them. That means Apple, that means Spotify, that means YouTube as well. And if you're watching us, hit that thumbs up button for us, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. In today's episode, brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com. Place your NFL live bets all season long. The Cleveland Cavaliers on Thursday were fined by the NBA a whopping $250,000 for sitting Darius Garland a couple of weeks ago against the Toronto Raptors. This was because this game against the Toronto Raptors was, I guess, an NBA nationally televised game. It was a Peacock exclusive game. So while technically not on national TV, it's a national streaming game, which I guess is the same thing at this point. I was having a conversation with somebody the night of that game in Toronto, and we were kind of batting around the question, is this like more or less than what the NBA TV games used to be considered to be, because those were kind of lumped in as nationally televised games? And I think the NBA gave us our answer on Thursday, because the Cavs being fined $250,000, I think, is not a great look by the NBA. So this is the second time this year the Cavs have been fined for violating the player participation policy. And that policy really takes into account guys that are star players, which Darius Garland, while recovering from an injury, is a star player because he made the All-Star team last year. The same way Donovan Mitchell is a star player, and Evan Mobley, all three guys by the NBA's rules are considered to be star players under this policy. And if we think back to this game that Darius Garland did not play in, it was the second night of a back-to-back for the Cavs. They played at home against the LA Clippers the night before, and then they played in Toronto against the Raptors on Monday night. And against the Raptors, the Cavs were without multiple guys. Garland was one of them. DeAndre Hunter sat this game for rest purposes. If you think back to that, Jared Allen didn't play, Sam Merrill didn't play. Those guys are still out and obviously don't necessarily qualify for this. But when the Cavs were fined originally for violating this policy, it was the game they won against the Miami Heat, where it was the first end of a back-to-back. Donovan Mitchell didn't play. Evan Mobley didn't play. Darius Garland was injured because he hurt his foot, re-aggravated his foot a couple of nights before in the first of the two games in Miami. And the Cavs were fined $100,000 for that. Now, the Cavs would ultimately go on and win that game because Craig Porter Jr. was awesome. And, Naquan Tomlin, that was kind of like his, I don't know if it was his coming out party, but part of his emergence, right? Jared Allen had a very good game that night. And the Cavs went on to find a way to win that game. And it was, I think, one of their more impressive wins that they've had this season, given the circumstance. And I said after that, that fine cost of doing business, right? That was the Cavs playing 5 games in 7 nights. It was the front end of a back-to-back, and they did play Evan and Donovan the next night at home against Toronto, and that did not go very well whatsoever. The Cavs lost that game. And Evan Mobley, I think, had his worst game of the season. But the Cavs wanted to rest those guys. They didn't want to play them 5 times in 7 nights, and I can't fault them for that. And I said at the time, it's a cost of doing business, and if you're going to get fined for not making those guys play 5 times in 7 nights, then so be it. You got to do what you got to do. So while I understood why the NBA fined them for that, I also understand why the Cavs did that. And I think it makes sense. And I think if the Cavs were given the option to do that again, they would not change a single thing about the way they handled that. So let's fast forward to this one, because Garland, the difference between those two instances is Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley, when they sat out that game against Miami, they were out for rest purposes. They were listed on the injury report as rest, which you can do. We saw in the same game the Cavs were fined for sitting Darius Garland. They listed DeAndre Hunter out with rest. And Darius Garland was not listed out via rest. He was listed out with the exact same thing that he's listed out for tomorrow's game, or I guess actually today's game. I'm recording this at 7 o'clock in the evening on Thursday. So on Friday's game, Darius Garland is not going to play. And if you open up the injury report, or if you just go to anyone that has it on social media like I do, you can see what Darius Garland is listed at. And for this game that he will not be playing in, Darius Garland is listed injury/illness, left great toe injury management. That is the same injury designation that he had in this game against the Toronto Raptors. Now, the NBA is fining the Cavs because Garland played the day before against the LA Clippers in a home game, and he didn't play the second half of the back-to-back. So what this is doing, and why I think the Cavs have every right to be upset about this, and I do believe that they are upset about this, and they should be upset about this, is this is the NBA dictating the Cavs that, okay, we understand that there's an injury plan here, because I do think that this is not some secret. It's not like the Cavs are just picking and choosing when Darius Garland's going to play and when he's not going to play. He's very clearly on a specific plan that does not involve playing in back-to-backs. That is very clearly part of the Darius Garland ramp-up situation. I don't know if he's going to play back-to-backs at all this year. Maybe he does at some point, but he obviously is not doing that right now, and certainly wasn't doing that 2 weeks ago at this point, 10 days, whatever, how long it's been. So for the NBA to fine the Cavs because they would have preferred he played on a different day instead of the day that he did play, I think is absolutely ridiculous. I think it's an insane, absurd thing that the NBA is fining the Cavs because they don't like the return to play process that the Cavs have for Darius Garland. If Garland were just out with rest, I would totally understand it. And that's breaking the rules, and you got to fine him. And I would basically sit here and say the same thing I said the first time the Cavs got fined. Price of doing business. This isn't that, though. This is a guy that is very clearly, too, if you're watching the Cavs right now, very clearly not 100%, right? And let's go back to that game that they sat Darius Garland on. It was the Monday of Thanksgiving week. The Cavs played Sunday at home against the Clippers. And if the Cavs have the choice to, they, I do think, would rather play their star players at home in front of their home fans. Like, if the Cavs have the choice of playing Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley at home, and think back to when Donovan and Evan rested, those guys rested on the road. They would rather the Cavs fans in Cleveland be able to see the star players. If they're going to rest, the Cavs would rather do it on the road so that the fans at home can watch. You know, if you're taking your kids or if you're going to a Cavs game, they want you to be able to watch the best players at home. They're not, why would they necessarily care about what Miami's fans get to see or what Toronto's fans get to see? They're going to put what is best for the players and the team first and foremost. Like, that is going to be the priority. That should be the priority. And then after that, like, if they have to pick, okay, well, do we want to appease the Toronto fans or do we want to appease the Cavs fans? They're going to pick the Cavs fans 10 out of 10 times, and they should. That's how this works. And I would expect every other organization to do that. There's not an organization out there that I would say, no, you should value the Cavs fans more than your own. I think that would be ridiculous, just like I think it would be ridiculous for the Cavs to say, no, we actually want to play Darius on the road instead of at home in these back-to-back situations. Or same thing for Evan, same thing for Donovan, whoever, right? So I just think it's an absolutely ridiculous thing that this has resulted in a fine. And let's go back to that week, because the Cavs played on Sunday. They played on Monday. Darius played on Sunday, but by him not playing on Monday, you know what that did for Darius Garland? It gave him extra rest, because the Cavs played Monday. They did not play Tuesday, did not play Wednesday, did not play Thursday. They played again on Friday. So instead of Darius Garland having 3 days off, Darius Garland, who very clearly is still trying to work his way back to full strength from a toe injury that cost him basically the playoffs last year and the start of the season, they're trying to be as smart as they can with this recovery process for Darius. So it's not as if that, they're just picking games out of a hat that Darius Garland is going to sit. It's no secret. He's not playing back-to-backs right now. He's not playing tonight. I think it's a good thing he's not playing tonight. I think it's a better thing he plays on Saturday, because if he plays on Saturday, what's it mean? He got a little bit more rest in a stretch like this, where the Cavs are playing 5 games in 7 nights. It means instead of playing Wednesday, Friday, he's playing Wednesday, Sunday. Maybe the extra day off will be a good thing for Darius Garland. Just like the hope would have been that instead of playing Darius Garland on Monday and giving him 3 days off, you play him on Sunday and give him 4 days off. So for the NBA to step in and fine the Cavs for doing this, for operating this way, I think is a ridiculous thing. And I think that there's a chance that this could have negative ripple effects, because this should not change, to me, this should not change the way that the Cavs handle things. And I don't think that it will. Like, if the Cavs have games set aside for Donovan Mitchell to rest, or Evan Mobley to rest, or Darius Garland to be out with injury management, they're not going to change their plan. Because even though things don't look great right now, and we will talk about the state of this team and what needs to change coming up in just a second, but even though things don't look great right now, that doesn't mean the Cavs can't accomplish what they set out to accomplish still. Like, their goals are still out in front of them, and they're going to take the long view and hope that they can get through the funk they're in right now and get time together when not only on the practice floor this upcoming week, but also get like 20 or 30 games with the team hopefully fully healthy and see what it looks like at that point, because I would imagine it would look much better than it does right now. But what we could see, and someone threw this out to me, what if instead of Darius Garland being out for injury management, he's not on the injury report and he's in uniform and he just sits on the bench and collects a DNP CD? You know what the NBA can't do? They can't fine him, because the Cavs can then come back and say, we wanted to get a look at Tyrese Proctor tonight. We wanted to get a look at, some extended Craig Porter Jr. minutes tonight. It was in the best interest of the team for those guys to get Darius Garland's minutes. Now, would that be the truth? No, but if the guy's active and just Kenny Atkinson decides not to play him, that is Kenny Atkinson's prerogative, right? I don't know how the NBA would handle that. I think that is a dangerous place to go, but by fining the Cavs $250,000, I'm not here to, cry for Dan Gilbert's pockets. That's not what this is about. This is about the precedent that it's setting by the league, because I do think it's a bad thing that the league did this. Dan Gilbert has plenty of money, and that should be the least concern of any of this. But the message that's being sent, I think, is the wrong one. And that's why I think that this is a dangerous precedent to set. If Darius Garland were out just to rest because he didn't feel like playing, that would be one thing. But the NBA fining a guy or finding the Cavs because a player isn't healthy enough to play both ends of a back-to-back right now, I think is one of the more ridiculous things that I've seen this year. I think the Cavs are mad. I think the Cavs should have every right to be mad, and I will be very curious, because I know Kenny Atkinson will be asked about this on Friday prior to the game against the Spurs. I will be very curious to see what he says, but overall, I think that the first fine cost of doing business. This fine, I think, is absolutely a ridiculous one. Now, let's talk about the actual basketball, because the Cavs are shooting too many threes. They're taking away shots from other areas, and they're worse in some specific categories than they were a year ago. I'll tell you all that information next right here on Locked On Cavs. But first, today's show is brought to you by DoorDash. The season's heating up, and DoorDash has a way to keep fans in their bag the whole way through. Whether you're watching the highlights, the tunnel fits, or just your favorite player, DoorDash makes the entire season so much more fun, because every player's got their bag, right? With DoorDash, fans have one too. DoorDash keeps your snack stocked, your gear fresh, and your watch party vibes absolutely on point. There might be nights when your team stresses you out. I can think of a few if you're a Cavs fan. Like, I don't know, 4 of the last 5 games they've played, I think, have been pretty stressful nights if you're a Cavs fan, considering the way that the team has looked. But what you can do is you can let DoorDash become your post-game therapy. Sometimes you just need dessert right now. I could go for dessert right now. I actually might get some dessert when I finish recording this show. And those late night interviews hit and suddenly you need chips at midnight. Well, DoorDash is built exactly for that. And if the group chat says, hey, pull up, DoorDash makes sure that you show up prepared, because snacks, cups, even a phone charger for the friend who's always got 2% battery left. So from tip off to overtime, stay in your bag and order on DoorDash. Get snacks, drinks, gear, and whatever gets you through the season delivered right to your door. DoorDash, in your bag all season long. Thank you again for making today's edition of Locked On Cavs your first listen. And thank you to those of you that make Locked On Cavs your first listen every single day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast. That means Apple, it means Spotify, that means YouTube as well. The Cavs are shooting too many threes right now. I think that is something that has become clear and obvious. I think the Cavs know that. I think Kenny Atkinson knows it. And I think everybody watching this basketball team knows that the volume of three-pointers for the Cavs is too high. So at the current moment, and the Golden State Warriors are playing as I record this. So theoretically, this could change because they are close. But the Cavs are leading the NBA in 3-point attempts per game. I believe it is at 44.8 attempts per game. That is the number one mark in the NBA. The Warriors are close, but the Cavs have the most. And if you look at the box score from the game they played against Portland on Wednesday. The Cavs shot 52 threes in that game, which is, I would say, an absurd number, but that's like not even in the top 5, I don't think, of attempts they've had in a single game this year. They've been around 50 several times. Now, they have had games where they're around 30, and I think that might be a little bit too low. They need to find a sweet spot. And part of the issue, I do think, is they're not getting to the rim frequently enough. So far this year, the Cavs are 21st in field goal attempts inside the restricted area. 21st. That means 20 teams in the NBA get to the rim more frequently than the Cavs do. However, when they get there, they're good. They're 12th in field goal percentage inside the restricted area. That's where you would want to be. Now, you would want to think, okay, well, if they are 12th in field goal percentage, let's take some more of those attempts, right? Because the Cavs are, like I said, first in terms of field goal attempts from beyond the arc. However, they are not first in three-point shooting percentage. They're in the 20s. And that is one of the biggest issues with this team. Yes, they're first in attempts. They are actually third in makes, but that's only because they take so many of them. But they're in the 20s. They are a bottom third shooting team right now. And I think a lot of it has to do with personnel. I think some of it is a little bit unlucky. Part of it is injuries that have certainly affected this team. Like the Cavs are a better three-point shooting team when Sam Merrill is on the floor. There's no doubt about that. But there are a few areas where I've kind of dug a little bit deeper on synergy on Thursday to just kind of check and see if the numbers are sort of backing up my eye test, if you will. And so far this year, and I think that these numbers are good to compare to last year's numbers. And I understand that the personnel is different, but I just think when we think about where the Cavs offense was historically great last year, I think it might not necessarily be in some of these areas, but I think some of these areas helped them be historically great. So far this year, the Cavs have taken 15.3 guarded catch and shoot three-pointers per game, according to Synergy. That is the 7th most in the NBA. The Cavs last year took 13.5 catch and shoot guarded three-pointers last year. That was 15th in the NBA. So they have upped their volume of guarded catch and shoot threes, which is that the worst shot in the world? No, it's not, but it's not a great shot either. Last year on those shots, on the catch and shoot guarded three-pointers, the Cavs shot 34.4%. That was 13th in the NBA. They were a middle of the pack team as far as that goes, which I think is a fine place to be. This year, they're shooting 29.3% on those. So they're taking a lot of them, and they're 25th in those shots. Like that so far this year has been one of the most inefficient shots for this Cavs offense. And I think a big part of the reason why the Cavs are struggling. Now, the other side of this is, well, you do want to generate catch and shoot looks, and the Cavs generated a lot of them this year, and they still do generate a good amount of them. Or they generated a lot of them last year. They generate a lot of them this year too. So right now, the Cavs are creating 15.6 unguarded catch and shoot attempts per game. That is 8th in the NBA. That's a good number. That's a good place to be. You would like to see that be a little bit higher. You would like to see some of these guarded ones become unguarded ones, certainly. But the Cavs are doing a good job as far as this goes. And on those shots, they're shooting 40.9%. That might sound good, but that is 15th in the NBA. We are talking about some of the best shooters in the world shooting under 41% on unguarded catch and shoot threes. I'm not saying that those should be layups, but they have to shoot better than they are. Last year, they took 14.2 attempts per game, which was 10th. So the Cavs have actually improved how many unguarded catch and shoot threes they're taking per game, which is a good thing for this offense. The offense is right now 11th in the NBA. It's not all bad. It might feel like the sky's falling, but it's not all bad on that end of the floor. But last year, they shot 44.2%, which was, I believe, the best mark of anybody on unguarded catch and shoot threes. That is a big difference in this offense, is that they're not making wide open shots. Last year they were, this year they're not. Now, I don't think it's just that simple, because I do think a big chunk of it is who is taking them. Lonzo Ball, for instance, who is right now the second worst high volume three-point shooter in basketball. And I talked about this, I believe, on yesterday's show. I know I wrote about it over at my Substack, The Inside Shot, but of the players in the NBA that have played in 15 games, which I believe Lonzo is at 17, and he will play in the game tonight. Of the players that have played 15 games and take at least 5 3-pointers per game, There are 78 of those guys in the NBA entering play on Thursday. Lonzo Ball is 77th in shooting percentage. He is shooting for the season 26.9% on over 5 threes per game this year. That's a really bad place to be. That is something that is dragging the Cavs offense down. Dean Wade is another guy because while his volume isn't as high as Lonzo's, Dean's taking essentially three three-pointers per game, which there are 161 players in basketball that are taking that many and have played in 15 games. Dean Wade is 153rd in shooting percentage on threes of guys that have played that much. So those two, I do think in particular, are guys that are taking some of these wide open catch and shoot threes. Now, Lonzo has been better off the dribble, which is something that I think the Cavs need a little bit more of, because if you look at their off the dribble numbers, last year they were very good. So this year the Cavs are taking 14.1 off the dribble threes per game. That is the most in the NBA. There's the Celtics take the same amount, like they're tied at 14.1 per game, but no team is taking more off the dribble threes than the Cavs. They're shooting 32.6%. That is 15th. So this is another area where the volume and the accuracy are out of whack. And that's a problem, because if the Cavs are going to take this many off the dribble threes, they need to be more efficient on them. Last year, they took the third most off the dribble threes. They took 13.5 per game, but they shot 36.4% on those, which was the second best mark in basketball. So they took a lot of them, but their percentage was actually higher than their volume, which is a very good place to be. You could almost say, well, you could have taken more because you were good at them. And this is where I think the Cavs have missed Darius Garland. And I think of all the areas where they maybe have or haven't missed Ty Jerome, and it's really hard to say because he's not played a single minute this year. So I don't know that like the Cavs signing him would have made any difference, because you imagine that same injury would have happened in Cleveland that happened in Memphis. And it's a bummer, but it's the truth. So last year, Darius took a pretty high volume of off the dribble threes, and he shot like 39.6% or something like that, according to Synergy. So it's just a shade under 40%. And this year, Darius hasn't been available. And I don't want to dig into his numbers because I don't think it's fair to him, considering what he looks like right now and how he's moving. I want to give him until really 2026 gets here to start diving into his game and what really needs to improve. But this is where they missed Ty too, because last year Ty did it on a lower volume, only playing around 20 minutes a game, but he shot 42% on off the dribble threes. And right now, Donovan's the guy that can shoot off the dribble threes. Lonzo's actually been solid in this area. It's the only area beyond the arc he's been good. I think he's shooting like 35 or 36% on off the dribble threes, which you'll live with. Like, that's a good number to be at. But that is the Cavs need to figure this out. And I don't want to pick on Lonzo Ball, because I think that he does still bring things to the floor. But offensively, the Cavs' identity is not what it needs to be. They don't get to the rim enough when he's on the floor. And I wrote about this at my Substack on Thursday morning. But when Lonzo Ball is on the floor, 53.3% of the Cavs' shots are from beyond the arc. That is the highest frequency of any rotation player. The only player on the roster that, like, the Cavs as a group take more threes than that when this player is on the floor is Chris Livingston. And he's played like 15 minutes this year. So that does not count. When Lonzo Ball is off the floor, 45.8% of the Cavs shots are threes. That is the lowest figure of anybody on the team. So when Lonzo is on the floor, the Cavs transition from a team that is, I don't know, I think 45 is probably healthy. It's certainly healthier. You might want it to be a little bit lower, but that's a healthy number to what I think is an unhealthy number in terms of frequency. And this is a thing that needs to change. Lonzo needs to get to the rim more, or the Cavs as a whole need to find ways to get to the rim when he's on the floor, because right now, that to me is exactly why that isn't working for the Cavs. Now, the Cavs are back in action tonight against the Spurs. We'll talk about the injury report, who's in, who's out, and what to expect in this game against San Antonio next, right here on Locked On Cavs. But first, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, suddenly everything feels different. And that is what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight reel-worthy moment. Live betting is the best too when the game starts to shift because a receiver might get hot. Defense could tighten up. We've seen that on Sundays with our Cleveland Browns because their defense actually pretty good. Their offense leaves a lot to be desired. Even with Shedeur Sanders under center, hasn't necessarily been great so far. But FanDuel lets you jump in on those moments because they've got live spreads, money lines that adjust instantly, right? You don't have to wait around. It's not going to take a long time to buffer. I've been there before. I've been on the app watching, ready to make my bet. Oh, the line changed. Maybe it's good for you. Maybe it makes you rethink your bet. But FanDuel does that constantly. They've got player props that update as guys heat up. Maybe somebody was a long shot to score 2 touchdowns in a game, but they already got one. So those odds are going to dip and maybe you missed out, but you can still cash in because you can bet the next touchdown score, drive results, totals, and so much more. FanDuel keeps you locked in every snap, every drive, and every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com. That is FANDUEL.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Thank you again for making this edition of Locked on Cavs your first watch on YouTube. If you are watching right now, do us a favor, thumbs up button for us, subscribe, notification bell, click them all so you don't miss the latest from us here at Locked on Cavs. And the Cavs have, I think, what is a very important weekend. And it is not my belief that the Cavs are going to go 2-0. I have not seen anything from this team recently that makes me think, yeah, they got this, right? Like they have been so inconsistent. I expect them to find a way to win one of these games. I don't know if it's going to be tonight. I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow against the Warriors. I expect them to win one of these games, and I expect them to probably lose one of these games because this Cavs team has been just that. They've been a team that one night looks good, the next night doesn't look good. Or one night they look bad, the next night they look good, right? We have seen both of those things, not only this season, we've seen both of those things this week. And that is something that just kind of have to expect moving forward. As for tonight, Darius Garland not going to play, out with injury management. Tyrese Proctor also out because of personal reasons. Don't know what's going on with him, but wish him well. Hope it's nothing serious. Jared Allen still out with the finger injury. Sam Merrill still out with a hand injury. Kenny Atkinson said again prior to, or maybe it was after the game, I don't remember exactly when the question was asked, against the Blazers on Wednesday night, that Sam is still only doing stuff with his left hand. So I think at this point, it's probably fair to say that Sam is not only not going to play tonight against the Spurs, but I would imagine he does not play on Saturday against the Golden State Warriors either. Maybe by the time the Cavs are back from their NBA Cup break, he's back. Maybe Jared Allen is back. I think the week off that is upcoming is going to do a lot of people really, really well. Those two in particular included. And then, of course, there are the two other longer-term injuries. Larry Nance Jr. not going to play anytime soon. And Max Strus, who's also out with that foot injury. Don't know when he'll be back, but I would not imagine that it's anytime soon either. So the Cavs are going to be shorthanded again. They'll be shorthanded tonight. I would imagine they'll be shorthanded tomorrow, though they should have Darius Garland tomorrow, but won't have Lonzo Ball, I would imagine, in tomorrow's game against the Warriors. So they have to find a way to get through these games. If they can find a way to go 2-0 against the Spurs and the Warriors, I think that would be a great way for this group to head into a break with good, positive feelings, positive vibes about themselves. They go 1-1. I think they're kind of where they are still, trying to figure things out. But I think ultimately the next week is a really big week. The Cavs will play 3 games between now and next Friday night. And this is the time where if they're going to figure it out, I think this is when it happens. And if it doesn't happen now, and especially when you consider what the schedule is after the break, if it doesn't happen now, that's when I think it's really time to start worrying. I'm not saying tonight, I'm not saying tomorrow, but if we are having these same conversations 2 weeks from right now, I think then it's time to start hitting the panic button. I don't think we're there. I think that if you look at the history of some teams that have taken advantage of this, and look no further than last year's Indiana Pacers team. The Pacers last year were 10-15 through 25 games. The Cavs won't be that. They will, in my estimation, probably be 14-11 through 25 games because the 25th game is tomorrow night. But the Pacers were 10-15. They had this break at the NBA Cup, and they figured a lot of things out. And from that point forward, they essentially had the same winning percentage as the Cavs. And I don't know if that's going to happen for the Cavs, but I do think if you want to hold on to hope, that's kind of the place to look. And I still don't think that we can rule this team figuring things out. We can't rule that out, but they've got to do it, I think, in the next 10 days. I think these next 10 days, and I said before this week that we would learn a lot about this team. I think we have learned a lot about this team. And I think the next 10 days are going to be just as big, if not bigger, than what we've seen from this team so far this week. So that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked on Cavs. But don't you worry, Locked on Cavs will be back tomorrow because Cavs play tonight. So I will be talking first thing tomorrow morning about whatever happens between the Cavs and the Spurs. And then, of course, I will have you covered on Sunday morning as well, talking about the Cavs and the Golden State Warriors, because we've got 2 games, and Locked on Cavs does not take days off. We don't load manage here at Locked on Cavs. We are coming at you every single day. So as we get out of here, do me a favor, please make sure you're subscribed wherever you are listening to this, whether it's Apple, whether it's Spotify, or if it's on YouTube, hit subscribe. And as you're watching, hit the thumbs up button and the notification bell so you don't miss anything from us here. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll talk more about the Cleveland Cavaliers.